Okay, great. Thank you. Welcome. Thank you so much for making it here and adapting with us to our changing times and locations and any disruptions you may have experienced with the heat. We're really glad to see you all and be here with you today. So my name's Kay Michael. I'm the co-founder and creative director of Letters to the Earth. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to today's event, Field Notes from Around the World, Rights of Nature in Action. So we'll be hearing from global rights of nature advocates on how they are advancing new approaches on environmental protection rooted in law and relationships. I do want to note that we're really sad to not have Bronte Ansell here with us today from Lawyers for Nature. Disruptions with the heat meant that she had to stay at home, but we have got a replacement today in the form of Paul Pousland, a co-director at Lawyers for Nature, who will be in conversation with Natalia Green from Ecuador and the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature Global Director. So welcome to the UK, Natalia. And we have presentations from Casey Camp-Horinek, GARN's Indigenous Council Chairwoman from Turtle Island, Ponca Nation. Welcome. And we have Roberta Gostu, the Antarctic Rights Campaign Lead. Welcome. And Thomas Rickard at the back from We Are Nature-Based CIC and the former coordinator of the Rights of Nature Network in the UK. Welcome. So we also have voices of children, parents and activists strung up in this space behind you in the form of letters and messages to the earth. From young people recently at the Natural History Museum and also on postcards of this size from people sitting alongside the River Thames last October, giving voice to the River Thames, and the colourful letters that were written only a few days ago at Shakespeare's Globe by thousands of people that took to the stage to share their message for the earth. So we've been gathering these voices and amplifying these messages for 7 years now at Letters to the Earth, from people and groups all around the world that share the experience of living in a time of planetary crisis and change. And they uniquely express the sorrow, the fears, the anger, the hope, and the overwhelming love of what it means to live in these times. Love for the earth, for the more than human world, and for fellow humans. And many have written in the voice of the ecosystems and species they care about. And that is our invitation for you today too on the postcards on your chairs. So the thousands of voices speaking up to and for and as the earth is the cultural underpinning of a growing rights of nature movement, a diverse, vibrant and proud reclamation of our inherent connection with nature, as nature, and a recognition of the inherent rights of the natural world alongside and within our human rights, law and culture. So whilst we're in the time of extreme climatic changes and our move to this indoor space is testament to the adaptability we need to keep flexing, we are also in a time of great remembering, a remembering of our relationship with the earth, a relationship that can be one of respect and responsibility. So we're here in the Nature and Rights Hub. Thank you to Synchronicity for having us and all other partners involved. And we are bringing nature to the heart of London Climate and Nature Week. So we're intentionally bringing the emotional and relational dimension of environmental action into this space, understanding that without a loving connection with nature, deep care and long-term environmental action is harder to mobilise. We are people connected to rivers, forests, trees, plants, oceans, and countless others, four-legged ones, two-legged ones, winged ones, and more. Now, whilst we're sad to not be outside today along Regent's Canal to listen directly to the wisdom of the water and the other beings there, we are honoured to have Casey Camp-Horinek with us today, who will open with another version of a water ceremony in this space, which I believe might be even a bit more special to bring this indoors and see how it changes the quality of this venue here today. So over to you, Casey, and then we will just follow with our conversation. Thank you.
Where's that? Thank you. Through microphone, probably. I think I could use another dose of caffeine. It's kind of unique in our language. It's called mankasabe, which means black medicine. So and it's all about being sacred. You know? And this is our first medicine here, the sacred water. You know, usually I'm supposed to introduce myself, but it's really not important. What you should know about me is that I'm a mama to this one over here. I'm a grandma, a great grandma, a sister, an auntie, a granddaughter of many, many generations. And that I live in this present day with all of those things first and foremost in the way that I walk this world. And this world, this sacred Mother Earth, that's my mama as well. And my mama's part of that after she made her transition into the spirit world. The connections that we have are through all of these sacred items that we take for granted. And that's what brings us together today. It may seem as if you made a choice about, well, that looks like a good program, I want to see what it is. But there's more than that to you. Because in your way of being, you have found that life itself exists within you in such a sacred manner that you want to acknowledge it. And you just can't figure out exactly how that works. And so you seek out those of us that are sitting next to you, that are around you, sharing this feeling, sharing this way of being that you know exists. But in today's modern world, you don't often get the chance to be with like beings. But you are today. Today, we're acknowledging that you are a water body. I was sitting at a funeral one time and going through the mourning process, which for us has a whole ceremonial 4-day thing with it, and then 4 days more, then a year, and then 4 years. There's a whole sequencing when you're missing the vibration of someone that you love. Sitting there that day, I was trying to understand how to deal with that transition, how to no longer be with that spirit. And I was realizing that when the body goes back to the earth where it belongs, because we really are kind of recyclable, you know, that we understand that this body that we wear over our spirit is simply made of the elements. And then when the spirit gets to be back with Wakanda, back into Mother Earth goes the body, and it loses warmth. It dehydrates. Its cells become part of Mother Earth again. The breath leaves. And conversing, when we're born, what is the first thing that happens? We swim in the mother ocean of our own mother. We're in the water and the sacred medicine. We're warm. We have the heartbeat of the earth within us. And when we burst into the earth in that sacred tide of being, we go, and we take that first breath. And that's what we're doing today, is all of those things. We're recognizing the water within us that connects us all. There's no new water since creation. It's all water that has been somewhere. Sit with that just a second. Where has that water been? That now circulates through your body. Most recently a faucet. But where was it before that? And before that? And before that? From time immemorial. You're part of the Thunder Nation. You have been rain. You've been snow. You've been that polar cap. You have been through an elephant's trunk. You have danced on the surface of the ocean in a wave. A whale knows you. And more. And you were a snowflake. Yeah, that's you. That's you. That's what this body is made of. And the breath. Where has the breath been? What has it experienced that we're now sharing? Because we all come from a different experience, a different portion of Mother Earth, different bloodlines, different places that called us home when we breathed in. Maybe from the red bird song, maybe through the jungle that's represented in these ferns around here. Because those green things breathe a certain breath, and when they exhale, we breathe it in and transform it back for them. That's our relationship. That's our kinship with all that is. And how do you come about walking in a warm body? Is that an accident? No, no, no. Again, the fire is a sacred being with a life of its own, just like the water, just like the breath, the wind. So the very core of our mother that we share is molten. She's fabulous. She's amazing. And that's her. And that's who we are, as well as this beautiful sun that is overheating us all, and we're all gripey about it. But that heat sustains our lives and our bodies. And we're not separate from that either. That is us. And then what is actual the body of but Earth? Earth has nurtured us, no matter how we've behaved as a species, no matter how foolish our species has treated her. She still provides us food, nourishment, love, and her very blood, the sacred water. So we come into spaces like this to uphold one another's belief system of relationship and to recognize fully exactly what is that relationship and how we cannot feel separate from nature. So when we look at the saying up here, shared earth, shared responsibility about the rights of nature, what does that truly mean? It truly means you also respect yourself as a portion of the sacred circle of life. And in doing so, you accept that responsibility as a sacred duty, as something that has been gifted to you, along with this life to walk. Is that responsibility to love and care for all living things, beginning with oneself and working outward and recognizing that respect, recognizing that responsibility is such a power in itself that we come all the way to England and to a place that has not been kind to the Indigenous peoples, who has not recognized these things, these teachings, in many centuries, and yet it was your teachings as well at one time. To understand that the tree was sacred and it carried memory and wisdom and a way forward. To recognize that these stones and the circles, the stone nation, the stone people, had their ways. Our understanding, where I'm from, is that everything that ever lived eventually becomes stone as it goes back into the earth. And that wisdom of all things is within that stone. And we had the honor of being out in this beautiful territory that you claim. I was with a Jamaican man in a taxi on the way from the airport, and he said, you know, they claim the land, but we understand that the land claims us. So this land that claimed you has many sacred spots that are so powerful, and one of them is that Avebury. Pardon?
Avebury.
She says it so English. I can't quite go there, so look it up. Don't Google it though, because that's all data center stuff. We'll go there another time. That probably just cost you a gallon of fresh water. That will never happen again. Yeah, we want to respect the water, so we won't do that. So we can ask, you know, how to get there and what to do, and we can ask the stone relatives themselves. And that's another thing I guess we need to think about is, what is this ego stuff with us humans that makes us think that those things want our voice to represent them? I don't know. I really don't know. I do it though. Because I do listen and I do pay attention. I'll give you an example of that. We're having a water ceremony under a bridge in Paris one time when we were at the Paris UN thing. And we knew we needed to have a ceremony with the rivers there. And so all the Indigenous people were running around Paris and where would we go? You know, what water wants us, not what is our choice by, you know, two streets that run together and there's a ditch there, but what does the water want? And we didn't know because none of us were from there. So we eventually gathered under a bridge that did want us. And there was a mist and a light rain going on. It was kind of cold and the waters were running underneath it. And we gravitated there. Pretty soon there was hundreds of us in circles and a prayer. And it felt really good. It felt really good. And at some point, we had a water song to offer. And believe me, there's songs out there. You just have to kind of open and catch them because they're there. We had a water song we offered. And I asked the women there, because we, in a beautiful way, the women stood in a very large circle and the men stood around us. And representative for me of the buffalo. Because the women will gather in the center with the children when there's danger. And the men buffalo gather around us to protect us, to care for us. And it was like that there, and it feels that way here, by the way. And when that happened and they were surrounding us, I asked the women, do you have songs? And several songs came up, some from South America, some from the islands, some from various places around the world. And one of our friends from the Arctic, Wiccan Nation sang a song of the whale. And I didn't even know the whale had a song that humans had interpreted. But she sang this deep, powerful, strong song from the whale. And so many of us had our own drums or whatever, singing our songs, or maybe it came in the form of the flute. But one lady of the Sami Nation said, my sister and I are going to sing a song of the ice. I said, wow, how does that go, you know? And I thought it would be our voice. But all of a sudden, I'm getting chills now, came this incredible song of cracking ice, of the tinkle that happens when ice touches ice, of the shush that happens when the snowflake touches the very surface of the snow up there. And song went on and on and on. A reindeer's hoof, what it sounds like on the ice. It was just the most amazing thing to hear how the earth spoke in various areas and how humans who listened, Indigenous people who are now leading this climate action stuff, were listening to the voice of earth, water, fire, and air, and interpreting that back to other humans. And it went right along with our Ponca teachings. Those who interpret are called Yeska, and that's not interpreting from one language to another, but from one entity to another, one spiritual realm into this realm. All of those things mean the same. And that's who you are today. That's what I'm trying to arrive at here. Is that on this day, even if you didn't bring water from your river, you are a water body. You are an earth being that contains fire, air, water, and earth. And your prayer is heard as such, and you are connecting in relationship, not only with each other here, not only so we can hear each other talk about what we're gonna do next, because there's hardly a next left as a species, unless we take action all the time. Not just talk about action, not just write a paper about action, not just spend the time doing the stuff that humans have done for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And for us, since the time of the doctrine of discovery, where they decided that things were inanimate and up for grabs. Everything's alive, or else you wouldn't be. So it's time to resist all of the nonsense. It's time to take action. It's time to be aware that you are the co-creators of the next step for humanity and all our relations, whether they are of four legs, whether they are of wings, whether they are of fire, air, water, or earth, all combined in a form you don't recognize, with the stone itself, the earth. You don't walk out of here unless you have a thought that you're accepting from yourself in relationship to these entities that create the body, the mind, the spirit, and the emotion, with a shared responsibility. So I think we'll go ahead and have our water ceremony at this time. There's been a wooden bowl that's been provided to us. The guest of honor is that glass of water right there. Because she's listening to everything. Water does have a memory. Water does have thoughts. I always find the strangest little pieces of inspiration. I saw a Bruce Lee thing. And it's like, oh, like water. Yeah. Well, it's that simple. That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna flow like water because we get to do that. And so the water is provided up here for those of you who did not bring water. There are the 4 sacred herbs that the Plains Native people of Turtle Island feel enhance the sacredness because they offer that gift to us. They're there as well. And it's very simple. We're all going to combine our water just like we combine our thoughts here. But the water that comes from different portion of the earth will go into this bowl. They'll be combined. They'll be offered to the sacred river here. Where's that young lady who brought some from? We'll start things. And my mom said, you know, one time she said, everybody these days is all hung up in the whole ritual business. You know, she didn't say it like that. She said, but all that needs to be done is a simple attitude of gratitude. That's all. She didn't do the pop. And we're going to come up here with respect, a sense of responsibility, and attitude of gratitude. And we're going to combine the waters or wherever we bring the water. If you don't have water, just pick up that glass with your gratitude. Add a few drops to the water here. And then the water's going to go back to the river here. I'm going to take some home, right? For our ceremonies where we can continue to take this prayer wherever we are. And if anyone wants to participate, beautiful. And if you don't want to, that's beautiful too. Then we're going to the next phase that Maddie's gonna talk about. I'm so grateful to be here with you all today. Thank you for choosing to be who you are, where you are, and how. We've done it. Out of respect for this water. harmony. Kanitaoshi, with the harmony. Kanitaoshi, with the harmony. With the harmony, with the harmony. Yeah, Kanitaoshi, with the harmony. I want you to, first of all, be proud of yourself. You just took this on in your day to quiet your mind, to be in your body, to respect and honor a sacred being. I was thinking you all stood for the water. How long has the water stood for you? How long has the water stood for you and been there for you? Yeah, it's really remarkable. Please relax and sit down if you choose. I think that for me, this is one of the more profound times that I'll take on from being in your country. This moment, the moment of standing with the sacred stones. This moment of acknowledgement of relationship, respect, and responsibility. This might be something new to you, and I ask you to take it as a new everyday feeling, all the time feeling. To wake up in the morning when the sun rises to say thank you. Even if it's just for a second. When you take that sip of water, or you stand in the shower, or you pass over a river, say thank you. Find ways to do for her what she does for us. Because we're all in this together. We have this little sliver of a moment in history that we can make a difference. What will that difference be? What will that difference be? Think of the water next to you, where you live, where your home is. If it's coming out of a faucet, that's it, that's good. You're blessed. Think of those in the deserts. For me, I'm thinking of my families back home that sacrificed and just ended a Sundance where they went 4 days without water so that they could understand the feeling of thirst. And in knowing that thirst, they could pray for the water herself, not themselves, but the water. Our people believe that's what has sustained us for generations, is that kind of prayer. They went without food for those 4 days as well, and they danced out in the open on the earth in the sun to the sound of the earth's heartbeat with a drum and sacred songs. And when I say we believe, I guess I really am saying we know, we acknowledge that that kind of respect, love, and sacrifice is what has sustained us as a peoples, so that we can come and share this time with you today. So I'm saying thank you, not just to my family and of Sundancers, but all of those that think and understand their portion of Mother Earth and what it's telling them. I'm asking you to listen, not with your ears necessarily. Oh, no, I love the sound. That's what we were talking about, my daughter and I, the sound of that water. It was everybody's different. Different sounds came from that. And it was just really, really beautiful not to be hearing us constantly doing what I'm doing. To listen to her. To know that we can sit pour water back and forth in a class and get something fabulous from that. Anyway, my heart stays with you. This water will be taken and offered back in a prayerful manner to the river who lives here. And we will honor our time here with you. We can. My brother also said that we should leave the water here. Go ahead and come on. Because she's listening. There was a time in our history that we didn't go individually anywhere. We always took a witness because it was important to come back honestly and not drag oneself up and say, you did fabulous things that you didn't. But to be able to come back with a witness who could speak for you. What was your journey like? How did people treat you and how did you treat people? Did you run across any buffalo? Yeah, that kind of stuff. If you're in the plains of Oklahoma and Nebraska. But here, the water is going to remain witness to all of us. That's the way our old people did as well, and our newer generation knows that the water hears, feels, retains memory, and shares. So that will be here. And I love you. Thank you.
Talia, and they always say you shouldn't beat your heroes, but luckily, despite being one of the main rights of nature heroes of the world, I would say, Natalia is also one of the kindest and most generous people with her time that you will meet. So I'm very glad to meet my hero for the second time after meeting you in Quito a few years ago. And yeah, you'll have to tell us a little bit about the global rights of nature movement and where things are at.
Well, thank you, Paul. Thank you, Casey, for that beautiful opening. And thank you, everybody, Synchronicity Earth, for bringing us into this amazing space. It's a pleasure to be doing this. Okay, we've been organizing with Ash and with everybody come for such a long time to be here. And now I understand why we met so many times and organized this space. And it's because we are not only coming here to share a story, we are coming here to move a movement, to be a movement, and to change consciousness and to change a paradigm. So I'm really happy that we're all here together. And as Casey, you said, we are here for a purpose. And it's important that we listen which purpose that is. What are we supposed to be doing? So thank you for the welcoming. My name is Natalia. I'm from Ecuador. And I've had, I wouldn't say not only the honor, but I've been really lucky because Mother Earth chose my path really early in my life. And that was that I was very fortunate to be part of the constitutional process in Ecuador in 2008, where we were able to incorporate the rights of nature into the constitution. And I'm saying that because I didn't expect to be there. There was a series of coincidences that made me be part of that process. And that process of the Constitutional Assembly of Montecristi changed my life completely. When we realized that, of course, like the first time that I heard or that we spoke about the idea of the rights of nature, it was crazy, right? Like nature and right, such a crazy idea. And I'm not a lawyer, I'm a political scientist. And for the non-lawyers in the room, if you were not aware or you don't know enough about laws, you don't necessarily know that nature doesn't have rights until someone tells you that we are promoting the rights of nature, and you're like, wait a second, how did that happen? Right? Because it doesn't make any sense. So, to be honest, the work that we've been doing is quite easy because it's something that makes sense. We are in a world that there are so many contradictions and so many things are wrong, that when you are working for the right thing and when you are talking about something like the rights of nature, it makes complete sense. And that is exactly what we worked on in the Constitutional Assembly in 2008, when we were, of course, trying to work on and think and dream about a new country. My country, Ecuador, had gone through like a lot of like political turmoil. I was talking to someone and said like, oh, when we got dollarized, I'm like, you're dollarized? Yes, Ecuador got dollarized years before the constitution. There was a big political turmoil with overthrown presidents. And what was really interesting is that at that point we were really understanding how lucky we were to be in a country like Ecuador, one of the most biodiverse countries in the world, but also home of one of the worst oil spills and oil disasters in the world, that is the Chevron Texaco case. So while we were working and understanding this, 2007, 2008 was also the year that we started moving forward with the initiative of Yasuni to leave the oil underground in the Yasuni National Park. And it made complete sense to be thinking about the rights of nature at that moment, because we were understanding how biodiverse we were, how lucky we were, but at the same time, which was the responsibility when we were changing the constitution. And there was an exercise that once was done the first day on the Constitutional Assembly, and it was, what's the country you dream of? And the country you dream of, many amazing and beautiful ideas came, but I'm not going to go long. I'm just going to say that 2008, we were able to incorporate the rights of nature in the Constitution. First time in the world where nature, as Casey you say, was not considered a resource, but a source of life, right? Nature was finally viewed in law as a rights-bearing entity and not as a subject, and not as an object you exploit, as a subject that you protect. And that spurred a huge movement. So I would love to quote this beautiful, amazing thinker that is Ilia Pregonini. And she says, in a sea of chaos, islands of coherence have the power to shift the system. And I feel that is what has been happening with the rights of nature. In 2008, we were able to incorporate it in the Ecuador Constitution. Now, 2026, there are 40 countries that have rights of nature. 22 of them have advances with legal jurisprudence. 18 have projects that are about to become legal advances. Many of them in Europe. Europe being led by Spain with Mar Menor, that is the first ecosystem that has rights in Spain. And the idea that we had today for the panel was to understand how are all these experiences coming from all the world. We're going to talk about Antarctica, we're going to talk about what's happening in the UK, we're going to talk about the Ponca Nation in the US. But the idea is, how do we make sure that the movement that is starting in the UK also learns about the mistakes and the victories of the movement in the rights of nature around the world, and really get settled in the UK. Something that is really important to us is to understand that we are not only trying to change the law. We want to change the law, to change a mentality of separation. And Cormac, you said yesterday that you don't remember many times what you say, but I really always remember when you talk about the eco-apartheid. I remember that conversation back in 2014 with Vandana Shiva and you were talking about the eco-apartheid. And that is what we are living, an eco-apartheid, a separation, a process and a system of separation where we think as humans that we are above and that nature is below, and that nature and we're separated. And nothing better than this ceremony that we did this morning to understand that we are together, that we are nature, and that of course not only it makes sense to promote the recognition of the rights of nature and to move forward a movement that is telling us that we need to end that eco-apartheid, but it makes sense for us as humanity because we don't really have another option. So thank you for your time, and the way we are settled is that Paul and I are going to have right now this conversation, this talk about what brings us here, and we're going to have a conversation with you three about the amazing experiences you're bringing to the ground.
Thanks. I was going to also have a brief intro about some of the lessons from Ecuador and how we might apply them in the UK. In every single talk that I've done over the past nearly decade about rights of nature, I think I've mentioned Ecuador because it turns what is otherwise a really interesting, nice, maybe radical idea into a reality. Along with the Wanganui River as well. It's suddenly, you sort of drop it like a bomb on people, like, actually, this already exists, and there's a forest in Ecuador which was saved by having its rights. So, yeah. And I was very lucky to be able to go to Ecuador a few years ago and to go on what I now actually regard as the most holy and sacred journey of my life into Los Cedros Forest. And I went there to a waterfall by myself, And at one point, I dropped to my knees, completely overcome by the profundity and abundance of life. It was the most alive place that I have ever been. And I realized that every single acre of that forest has more species in it than the entirety of my over in England. And it actually challenged my own advocacy and activism, because I was like, what the hell am I doing messing around with this completely ruined river in England that's too far gone? There's this place here. And actually, I almost got to the point where it's like, I should just sell everything I own and come to Ecuador and give up my life to save this forest. Then I came back to England and I came back to my boat on my river and realized that no, that isn't the right approach. And we need to have rights of nature in England for many reasons, but mainly this one. This is where it began. And by it, I mean the separation between man and nature, humans and nature. I think London has a claim to be the city that has the most responsibility for our current system of seeing nature as a resource to be used for human ends, as a dead resource to be used for human ends, rather than something with its own rights and interests. And until we end it here, the system will carry on, even if we have amazing advances in Ecuador or in Turtle Island or any other places. We need to end it here. How do we do that? Well, there's a temptation to look at the amazing success of Ecuador and just copy them. Be like, well, you know, they this amazing thing, it worked really well. So if we just get one law, like constitutional change, and put it in England, it will solve everything. That's not going to work. Partially because we don't even have a written constitution, but there are a number of other things as well. And it's really important to look at the differences between the UK and Ecuador to work this out. The first is we don't have a written constitution, but even then, so cutting in and out, sorry. Even then, we have a very different relationship to nature in these lands. In Ecuador, like with Los Cedros, they have large areas of untouched nature where the decision to save the nature is a binary choice. You either save Los Cedros, keep it as it is, or you mine it and destroy it. We have almost no nature like that in England. Everything has been touched by human beings, and the key question is not usually save or not save, although it can be. It's how do human beings live alongside nature? How do we balance the interests and rights of nature with the interests of humans? We also have very complex systems here that have evolved over centuries to benefit human interests over nature. And that's why we argue we need a rights of nature approach. Even if we had one big national law, that is not going to change, arguably, how companies relate to nature, how councils, how all the different, we have, I think, 500 quangos in this country who all relate to nature in some ways. One law is probably not going to change that. We need a rights of nature approach. And the joy of that as well is that we're not then waiting for a couple of lawyers to put in a legal change which will magically solve everything. If we need a rights of nature approach, then everyone can get involved, no matter what system you work in. If you're in insurance, if you're in acting, if you're an active nature restorer, it doesn't matter, because you can take a rights of nature approach in your work and in your world and start to make rights of nature a reality. And that then turns us to the biggest difference, which is one most obvious in many ways, is that, as we know, around the world, rights of nature has been spearheaded by Indigenous peoples, and we don't have Indigenous people in this country. And without that, it's going to be, some might think, very difficult to have rights of nature. And so what do? We need to become that presence in these lands. How do we do that? Well, some people just try and copy the amazing Indigenous peoples around the world. If we just, wear your dress and say your words, it might work. Yeah. You'll be lucky to know I've got another solution. I'm not going to copy your dress. What I am going to copy is your relationship to the land, your connection to the land, based in love and care and service. And to become Indigenous, or you might want to say a guardian in these lands, to avoid the I word, what we need to do is quite simple. Find a specific part of nature, connect with it and care for it and love it. and particularly in a way that is based in sacrifice and service. And I'm being told to shut up, but I do want to say a very quick example of how this might work in practice in 1 minute. Thank you, Kate. This morning, I came out of my boat on the river I live in, and for the first time in my life, I saw a mature eel sat right next to the boat in the mud. I thought it was dead, actually. I was really worried, and I put a little stick near it, and it started moving. That eel doesn't have any rights. My river doesn't have any rights. And there's no prospect in any legal way that those rights are going to arrive in a top-down way for at least a couple of decades, I would say, in this country. So do we just give up? No. You take a rights of nature approach to that eel. And that first one is telling you all about the fact that a magical creature that comes all the way from the Sargasso Sea is able to be there in the mud, in the river, in East London, next to a council estate and a motorway. That is magic. The magic of nature is everywhere. And then you fight for that eel's interest in every system that exists. So on my way over here today, I was in an online meeting with Transport for London, who control all of the road runoff outfalls along the river, trying to put together a new project to find and categorise every single road runoff outfall on the river to try and stop them. Next week, I'm going into Parliament with all the MPs along the road who I've gathered together to act for the river to stop the sewage. Later on, I'll be going onto Twitter to post a picture of the eel and tell people what they can do to fight for its rights. And I'll be using, as some of you may know, I've had a run-in with the government's environmental agency in the last week, use all the publicity that I've generated from that, all the contacts in favour of that eel later on to ask people to fight for its rights. That is a rights of nature approach, and it's an approach we can all take in these lands to make rights of nature a reality.
Thank you, Paul. And because we want to learn about all the amazing experiences of the rights of nature around the world, I'm going to pass the microphone to Casey so she can tell a little bit more about the Ponca Nation. The Ponca Nation has passed an institute for the rights of nature, and is the first tribe in the US that has passed a law for the rights of nature. So we want to learn about that experience. And I think that also about the reflection from Paul, I think that when we are in a continent like this that has very little indigenous population left, what will be also your advice for Europe in regards to how do we move forward with the rights of nature?
I love all this. This is really interesting and exciting to me to hear. First, I think the one thing that I needed to mention is we talk about the laws we're going to create and the manner in which we're going to act, but we need to always remember that there is natural law in action. Natural law is in action. And I love Movement Rights' little tagline, that human law must align with natural law. That's what we have to kind of get to, and that's what you're doing. And I really love that. The idea, I think, of humankind is to understand, maybe I'm going to use us as an example as Movement Rights. Because with Movement Rights, we work primarily in the plains of Oklahoma. And it is a redneck area. I mean, it is seriously so red that it is beyond scarlet, as far as the politics go. It is as far right as a right can get. And yet, there is the understanding that we share. For instance, when we were acting against a pipeline, we actually made an alliance up there of what we call the Cowboy and Indian Alliance up in Nebraska, in our homeland. We called it the new CIA. And understanding that all of us have the same thing that we have to look at, and that is future life, recognizing the life that we're all part of. And when I do say natural law, I want you to understand in our perspective that we've been told that this time is coming for generations. That the deer know where to eat and how to live. The fish know what to do. Everybody every species, I guess one would say, naturally behaves in a natural law within, except humans. We're the only ones that have actually broken the natural law. So we need to understand that the earth is purifying herself. That's the manner in which I can interpret that, because English words are a little difficult to say, but the understanding is that earth will endure. Whether humans get to be part of the cycle of life is really up to us. And you're taking action with rights of nature. And that's kind of what happened with the Ponca people, is that we have our original teachings. Many of our traditions point to relationship rather than ownership, rather than extractive type of economy, but the kind of circular behavior that everybody understands. My daughter always tells us we all live downstream, so we must behave in that manner. And you just said a very similar thing when you were talking about things. So our approach to rights of nature was to understand, what is the earth telling us here? What are the rivers saying here? What is the need for us to align our human law with natural law? And we had a series of movement rights meetings, first with just a small group of people and expanding it into our community. Kitchen table organizing is so important. You start with your relatives, right? It was always at mama's table when we were young, my brothers and I, and then we would bring in our extended families, and then we'd bring in neighbors and relatives. And you got to understand, if you're Ponca, you're related to everybody there. You just have to go back and to find that and bring those community members in. And my brother Carter Camp was an amazing organizer for the American Indian movement. And one of the things he said is that an informed people will ordinarily make the correct choice. So you begin those organizations within your communities, and they don't have to be a formal organization where everybody pays dues and wears a cute little outfit, but you are the kind of people that potluck together, that come together and hang out in a park where you're in nature. And you do the kind of organizing that says, that carbon trading does this. It really is a poison that is going to spread around the earth. That data centers are going to use up 80 millions of fresh water a day. Do you realize that the river that flows from that factory is going right past your house? But those kind of information things. And what if all nature was as protected as we humans are so fierce about ourselves, with our human rights, our gender rights, our religious rights? What if we were that fierce and demanding? Because civil society makes up 99.9% of the population, not those few that are considered themselves leaders. You're actually the leader of everything. So with movement rights, we eventually formulated the words, because, if other people can make laws, can't we?
Yes.
They're just other people, right? Yeah. And my daughter tries to tell me I can't jaywalk, and I say, watch that.
I think that's no jaywalking sort of thing.
Yeah, Shannon was saying, they'll kill you here. I'm fast. Maybe you'll, but I'm fast. So at home, we ended up understanding, I met with my council people, I was actually on the council at that time, to create the words that reflected the cosmology of our original teachings of how to be in relationship with the earth. And we wrote down all the words that were necessary in this statute to say we will uphold nature's rights just as she has upheld ours, including and all the way to saying climate has a right to exist. Because climate is what is cleaning things up. As uncomfortable as it is to have floods, to have wildfires, to have enormous hurricanes, that's part of Mother Earth's cleansing right now. And I understand humans are just in a way, we have really messed up, you know. You spoke about not having the indigenous peoples here. And that was a very deliberate attack from what I understand. The medicine people here really had to suffer because they had that deep knowledge. And folks wanted to look at all the earth as what they call a resource, as, you know, looking at that sacred tree in terms of how many feet we're gonna be able to make the planks out of, you know, instead of understanding that it is giving breath to us as we give breath back, and that there's a whole system of life dependent, just like with that eel. What is the whole system of life that it's enhancing and part of? It's so exciting to think about. So we went for Earth's information herself. What is it that she needs to be healthy? That approach you're talking about. And that's the way we approach every place that we're invited into, is to say, okay, we travel to the Mashpee Wampanoag because herring is their keystone species there. And they wanted to make a particular rights of nature around the rights of the herring, because that also fit with the cosmology of the fishermen who lived there. That, by the way, not indigenous. They come from over here, but they landed there a long time ago, so they think they're part of it. Well, they are. Actually, so many things come to mind. If you eat of the earth, if you drink of her water, you're part of that particular space you're in, you know. So by going into the spaces and asking people, what is the earth informing you from here? What is water informing you from here? And how then does your particular portion of society enact ways of being, whether we call them laws, policies, thoughts of behavior? It's all the same thing. But if you can put it on a piece of paper, other folks really take it seriously, come to find out. And so you can write down those laws. We wrote them in the form of a statute so that those who pollute can be held accountable. And the same 5 years later, after a series of meetings, we have done a rights of the rivers, because it felt necessary. There were areas that we would be able to say, you know, that the river is particularly impacted, even though she too is part of the earth and rights of nature was part of that. And it always goes back to that same thought. We humans are so full of ego, you know. We call ourselves land protectors and our land defenders, water protectors, but in truth, we're just another species, and we're really trying to protect our future generations as well as all of the other living things.
You, Casey, and again, congratulations to the Ponca Nation. I think that one of the things that we do with GARN, with the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature, is celebrate those victories and understand that we are moving forward and that we can do it everywhere.
Okay, what
So-
thing? Sorry. We also are the first Indigenous nation to sign on to the fossil fuel phase out treaty. And I really also, it is so important to let you know that there is a UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, and there's a form of sovereignty that was enacted by the United States when they took the land from us and our way of being. They made treaties with us. So whatever we do in our territory is sovereign. And everything that we do protects all of our neighbors in all directions.
Thank you, Casey. And we're talking about these amazing experiences. We can talk about local experiences, but we also want to talk about these big biomes. We have a campaign with the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature to promote the recognition of the rights of the Amazon as a rights-bearing entity. But there's an amazing campaign about the rights of Antarctica, that silent, huge continent that lies not below, but maybe above, right, Berta? So why did you tell us more about Antarctica rights?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. I have the hard job of being after Katie, so bear with me. I just want to ask a question to everyone. Can you raise your hand if you met Antarctica, if you visited Antarctica? Two people. But actually, spoiler alert, you all met Antarctica. So you should all raise your hands, because as Casey was saying before, actually the waters of Antarctica are reaching every one of us. I thought I met Antarctica 2 years ago when I started working and really caring about Antarctica for this campaign. But then I realized that I met Antarctica right after I was born. I was born in July, and then the day after, actually, my mom gave birth. She brought me to the sea, so I met the Mediterranean Sea. I'm from there. The waters of the Mediterranean are in me. And that's probably when I also met Antarctica for the first time in my life as well. And I'm sure that all the waters that you brought here today, Antarctica is here with us, inside us, because I am Antarctica and we are all Antarctica as well. And many times, I even myself at the beginning, I really thought and described Antarctica in a very scientific way. So what is Antarctica? Why is Antarctica important? And then I realized, are we really describing people in this way? Are you describing me on all the characteristics because I'm important? I mean, I make a great lasagna, but it's not just for this that I need to be alive. Maybe. That I'm important today. So I really realized that I should as well, we should describe Antarctica in a different way. Who is Antarctica? And then a friend of mine that is a scientist and has been in Antarctica many times, once described Antarctica as the heart of our planet. Because actually it's a huge heart. I mean, the planet is big as well. Antarctica is as big as Canada and the United States, just for you to give you a bit of a idea how big is Antarctica. And Antarctica is this heart that is really pumping through the different oceans like veins, all the water everywhere. So we have Antarctica here, we have Antarctica in the Mediterranean, we have Antarctica in the Arctic. How beautiful is this? We have Antarctica inside us and we met Antarctica. And Antarctica is also responsible through all these veins is responsible of the currents of the ocean. So something that is happening in Antarctica is affecting us everywhere. And that's actually, as we've always been talking about Antarctica as something that is, even there's this Antarctic Treaty System that is regulating and governing Antarctica, and describes Antarctica as a place for science and peace. Yeah, but who said that? Did we ask Antarctica actually if she just wanted to be a place for science and peace, and we should just be collecting all data for us to understand? And then that's also why we started this campaign, because we thought a lot of people think that Antarctica is just a block of ice at the bottom of the planet. But we've actually never really realized that we've all met Antarctica, that Antarctica is affecting our life every day, and vice versa, because the things that the fossil fuels that we are burning in China are affecting Antarctica. The things that we do in the United States are affecting Antarctica. And that's the link that we need to make, the connection. And the beauty of this initiative, so with Antarctic Rights, we are advocating for recognizing the rights of Antarctica, for finally listening to the voice of Antarctica. And the beauty of this initiative is really that we can realize that we are all connected to each other, that we have this relationship with nature. And it's not linked to the states or to the boundaries, because water doesn't have boundaries. And we can really finally also have those initiatives of rights of nature from a local perspective to an international perspective. We can rethink about governance, because even at those conferences, at the UN conference, we all have these little tags with all the countries. We go with our laws and positions and related to boundaries and to things that are just related to a state. And Antarctica is not even there, because there is no indigenous human population. So we are not bringing the penguins or the whales or the eyes there. And so Antarctica doesn't have a voice in this decision making. There is no tag that says Antarctica. And that's what we want to change. We want to really listen to the voice of Antarctica. We want Antarctica to be present there. And we still need to debate the details. I know. But I think this really a beautiful campaign, because it's bringing what all these people did at the local level into an international level. How we can think differently about diplomacy, why we should just bring states, why we don't just confluence at conferences with all our water bodies, and I'm coming from the Mediterranean and you are coming from your river, and we think about governing the planet, if we need really to govern, in a different way, so that the relationships are also different. And then talking about the details, how are we going to do this? This year we are working on a declaration for Antarctica. So we really want to bring the voices of everyone. So we are actually running consultations. We started last Monday, where we want to involve all the voices. So we thought that a declaration is the first time that we want to have all the different voices in a declaration that are never being taken into account, like a declaration that can involve artists, that will involve indigenous voices, that will involve politicians, musicians, whatever, like that really brings people that can bring their own opinion into the declaration. And also we want to look at different ways of listening to nature. So how we can even bring sounds, for example, how we can bring the voice of Antarctica into these decision-making processes to really finally listen to the eyes and to the whales, to the penguins. Because going back to the metaphor of blood and the heart, what's happening is that we are really bleeding out Antarctica right now. And if all this blood, all this water is actually melting from the ice, it's going to affect all of us and all the community of life. So not only humans, actually. The sea level will rise of 58 meters. Just let it sink. It's just going to be all communities, all Pacific islands will disappear. Our beloved Sardinia will also disappear. Like we will be all affected. And so I think it's really the time to think beyond boundaries, beyond borders, and really think about our relationship with nature in a more interconnected way, because we really are all Antarctica. We really all are nature. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. I think there's a lot to pick up on. One of the things that I wanted to sort of ask a bit more about is the challenges, but also opportunities from the fact that Antarctica doesn't have either an indigenous population or really an indigenous government. Obviously, there are territories that stake claims to it in a colonialist way. That obviously presumably creates many issues, but also many opportunities as well to act as a example of rights of nature could look like in a place like that. Maybe tell us more about that, but also, have you been to Antarctica? And And what does it feel like when you're acting effectively as you're a guardian of Antarctica, but you obviously can't be there all the time in the way that I can touch my river every day? How does that affect your work and your relationship?
I've never been to Antarctica, and this is actually, at first I was a sensitive topic as well. And I was like, am I an imposter? So my imposter syndrome actually is still there. But and then I really realized that I didn't have to go to Antarctica to care about Antarctica, because it's just, at some point it's also a experiment of empathy and basic subscription empathy as well. I don't need to meet all the people around the world to really care about someone. Or I love the Amazon forest, and I just recently been there, but I've been loving the Amazon forest since I was a kid. So I think it's just really, we don't really need to experience a place, or in this case, a person or a living being, to care about Antarctica. I know that for many people it's also a life change experience, so they really want to go there, and they say going to Antarctica really changed their life. But I really advocate for not going there. Everything that we do has an impact. So I can be a guardian of Antarctica, like we can all be, without just going to Antarctica. I was mentioning on Monday that now there are also these experiences of going to Antarctica, luxury experiences as well, where you have a luxury cruise and you can get married in Antarctica. There are marathons as well. So I can send you pictures. You can cry for 5 days in a row. So I think, and these also TikTokers that are talking about the last last chance of really going to places. I think we should not go. And then for the first question, I think is, as you said, is really an example of how this can become something that is in planetary diplomacy. We've been talking about that. It's Earth diplomacy, not really country-related diplomacy. So it's an experience that we can all learn, and we all need to act together to join these initiatives, because we can bring it to the next level.
Just to round that off, a little plug as well. I was at the consultation on Monday, and it really is. I just keep cutting them. It really is, I think, an example of how to do rights of nature declarations and legislation. That the actual draft was fantastic, but also the way you're bringing in different people and asking the right questions is really incredible. So if you haven't got involved in that yet, do get involved in that consultation, and obviously speak to Roberta McCormack as well about that. And just as a final point about that as well, it's actually really inspired me in thinking, because how you define Antarctica is interesting, right? And Cormac made the point on Monday that a lot of the time it's done by just drawing a line, but what does that line even signify? And so this draft is to define it by the temperature of the ocean, right? Yeah. Yeah, the polar upwelling. So it's like the natural process defines the place rather than the line. And it got me thinking about my river, because obviously what is the river Roding? What is it? Some people would say it's the line on the map that represents where the water goes in summer, but that's not right. Some people go a bit wider and say it's the whole catchment, and you draw a red line on a map that represents the catchment, but that doesn't feel right either. And while I was sitting there, while you were talking, I came up with the definition of what the river Roding is, which is the flow of every raindrop that falls to earth and enters the Thames via the confluence point. That is the river, right? And that's the natural process. And maybe we start thinking about, and that was thanks to you and your definition there, so thanks for that. So we're moving on now to talk about what all the amazing things that are going on in the UK to start making rights of nature a reality. And how was the network now? 2 or 3 years?
Yeah. UK rights of nature. I got a bit about it.
You tell us about the UK rights of nature network.
Well, I just want to advise you to take a breath. We've heard a lot. Just think about it, deep breath. So when I was thinking about how to talk about the UK rights of nature scene, I just wanted to step back, because there's a lot of things we could talk about. And I ask myself, what is driving it? Academics, lawyers, activists, artists, staking their personal, professional reputations on it, and working together. Not just a legal project or an activist project or an artistic project. And I think it speaks to a lot of what we've talked about today. I've had this very stark reminder this week of the origins of rights of nature and what we're benefiting from is that legacy of struggle over decades, over centuries. And we need to remember where this comes from and take on board some of your recommendations. We don't have to copy it, as you say, Paul, but we find our own relationship here to this land. And we are rivers. We're flowing bodies of water. And if we're rivers, then we can know how rivers feel. How does it feel to be polluted? You know how it feels. To be drained of life, to be held back, to lose your biodiversity, to not have a voice. So I think when we're working in rights of nature, there's something that calls people beyond the idea of a new law. No one really believes that some new law is going to fix the issue. It's speaking to something deeper. So yes, we have the UK Rights of Nature Network that's been built in for 3 years, academics, artists, activists and so on. We have the Rights of Rivers Network, River Rights Network too, 50 organisations on the ground. And I think that's a thread I want to run through here to talk a little bit about the scene. I'll just give you a few moments. I think one of the milestones is in 2022. Faith in Nature, well-established cosmetics company with support Lawyers for Nature, with us Law Centre, put nature on the board. What would nature say about procurement, sourcing, marketing, these other questions? That's an important innovation. It spreads to catchment partnerships. The why, the roading, the us. Yeah, a nature guardian, a river guardian on a formal decision-making space. Making explicit that question, not from a scientific point of view or a legal point of view, but what would nature say? What does nature need? In 2023, Lewes District Council start piloting the idea of a charter for the River Lewes. And they work together. They talk to hundreds of people. It's a broad collaboration. Again, lawyers, activists, artists, academics, working together with the council to build up to that first district council motion in 2025, February of 2025. That's the first council motion. Today there's 15. I'm not talking about towns and parishes even. City, district, county councils are adopting this very quickly. April last year, on the River Wye. That was supposed to be the most beautiful river of this country. So much artwork and poetry is being produced around this river. It's full of chicken shit and rubbish. That Nutrient Management Board appointed Louise Bodnar as the voice of the Wye. And she says, sometimes I will speak for the river. Sometimes I will speak as the river. And she explicitly recalls that Indigenous influence on her role and what she wants to do in that forum. And what has she done? As alongside many others, mobilised citizen science, anti-sewage campaigns, planning battles, and now the rights of the Wye have been acknowledged all along its catchment, including 3 county councils across 2 different countries. It's amazing. But it's also want to remind us that these people are often stretched. They're not fighting for survival, as in other parts of the world, but they're fighting, and they often don't have very much resources. They have families, they have jobs. And I think there is a question for us in this scene here in the UK about how do we organise? How do we distribute resources? How do we really catalyse those people on the ground who are doing an incredible job? Also, I want to recall that element of art, I think, has a very special place in the scene. I don't know if you've ever seen the Goddess of the Wye. 12-foot tall, blue, moving goddess of the Wye, you can meet her. And it's an incredible presence. Have you seen the pilgrimages, the river pilgrimages, the river festivals? There's something much deeper and richer going on than just a legal project. The legal project is just this part of it, this part of it that is before and beyond any of these laws that pass. But then the question comes, will it be effective? This is what often comes next. Well, I'll give you a couple of examples of that work that's being done right now. On the OOS, they're trying to take those rights and understand, what does that mean? The right to flow, how much, when, who's accountable if it doesn't? The right to biodiversity, which species, measured how, who's accountable? If you set at the core of the approach a very clear statement that centres the river, that puts the river first, yes, it can then be turned into something technical, managerial, boring, but hopefully effective, because we all know what we're striving for. And in Maidstone as well, nature rights framework. How can we insert the rights of nature into all of our plans, our biodiversity plan, our climate change plan? That has downstream effects, not just on whether development happens. It's not a binary. We're not trying to stop everything from happening. We're trying to change what happens. Because right now, housing, for example, people aren't happy with housing either. We want a housing development and other forms of development that serve everyone's interests, human and more than human. And we might be able to open to that with this tool. But there's another reason I think it might be effective as well, and that's the people involved. I was at Kew Gardens a few weeks ago, 60 practitioners from around the UK. Many of those counsellors, it's like they carry a light in them. You talked about this, when people know their purpose, they know what they're trying to do. There's a kind of ease about them. They flow in the room like water, and then flowing through those grinding state bureaucracies like water, finding the gaps and opening them up. And I think there's something very beautiful in that. I hope we can find better ways to support them. So why? Why is it getting so much interest and excitement? I think it is something what we're talking about today. It's a return to a story of us as belonging, of telling that story, of trying to live in a way that shows we know we belong. We need the right to flow. We need the right to be free from pollution. And when we strive for that right in our kin and our river kin and our nature kin, we're placing ourselves into this broader web of life. Yeah, and that's not even to talk about this broader ecology, you know, interspecies councils and legal projects. And the UK is this very rich ecosystem. And I think that's how we advance and how we can organise as a movement. There's no one single tool that's going to fix any of this. It's everybody coming at it, feeling called by their river and their places to contribute in ways that speak to them.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Thomas. And yeah, that is the perfect point to end on in terms of saying that this movement in this country is a rich ecosystem. And that means, like all ecosystems, that everyone has a role to play. And hopefully some of you might be thinking today, what is my role in this rich and growing ecosystem of rights of nature in the UK? And we're now going to move quickly to questions. 10 minutes of questions. I mean, is it ever okay going 5 minutes over lots of time into lunch? Because actually, I think you may have some burning questions. So if you do, then I'm going to make an executive decision there. So anyone has a question, I'll come and find you with a mic. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for a beautiful panel there. I've got a question for Casey. Thank you so much for the ceremony and your words. As the artist in residence for these few days, everything that you have sounded has been the wisdom that it feels like we all need to listen to and really listen to. And it's more than beautiful, it was more than nice, it was profoundly where we are, I feel. And the question I have for you is the thing that you've said about your people and the prophecies and the stories that have been handed down is there an answer? Is there an ending to this that you know of or that you have the knowledge of?
Okay, so I'll gather a couple of questions then. Anyone else have a question?
Well, if I know the answer to the end, why would?
Well, we don't need any more questions, do we? So over to Casey, Howard. This is all gonna, this is gonna tell us how all this is gonna turn out. Ready, everyone?
I really mean that as a serious question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. And I also have a good sense of humor about this whole thing because we have to. We have to have joy at the center of it all in order to do the things that we have to do. The earth is a joyful place. This is a beautiful place of being. And I only know what I was told, which is kind of not an answer, but it is as close as I've been given in ceremony. And it came from, according to the EASCA, according to the people who are running the ceremonies. And bear in mind, they're people. First of all, one has to understand is that a prophecy is mutable. So that if we have a dream, for instance, that we know a car is going to run us down in the dream, and it's red, and it's got a guy on the other side, on the left side instead of the right side, we get clues, we get understandings of what not to do or what to do according to the dream. Prophecies work the same way. If one has the ability to know that, for us, it was called the purification. It wasn't until I was quite a bit older, I'd say 30 years older than the ceremonial time, that I understood from the Ponca perspective and our understanding of spirituality that meant climate change. I didn't put those two together, but I saw the markers that were being told to me about where we were headed. And I understood that's what it meant. And that's what brought us into this thing that other folks call environmentalism. And eventually into rights of nature and how it could be something that would change the prophecy so that human beings could continue to be part of life's journey on Mother Earth. Because again, I'm a great grandmother. We're supposed to think 7 generations down the road. So this purification, they tell us that there's 2 roads that it can take. One is a black road, one is a red road. The red road is towards purification. Generally in life, spiritually, one looks for that road. Black road is the road of experience as a human being. And the understanding that I was given is that there would be a separation somewhere, the fork that happens, where those of us who understand we're Earth's children, nothing more, nothing less, would continue to live. And those that didn't would simply disappear. And that's been said over and over again in ceremony. What does that mean? I honestly have really been seeking, because we pit every marker that I've been given in ceremony, except that one. How does that happen? Is it Elon Musk and his rockets and they finally just get the heck out of here, Seriously, I don't know how that happens. I'm certain though that those of us who recognize ourselves as Earth's children and part of the sacred system of life will continue, because we'll get ourselves back aligned in a good way, and we'll figure out all the stuff that we have to figure out. We had our home in, out in the middle of nowhere in Oklahoma, have now got an earthen lodge that is protecting us from tornadoes. And that was the original way my people lived at one time. We have, compostable this, we're growing gardens. And I think that all of us just have to look at literally the roots, literally at our past, in order to see how to translate that into a future. It's there.
So, thank you so much for that. Thank you for the question as well. We have time for 2 more questions, which I'll take at the same time. Okay, we now have 3 hands up. Let's make it 3 questions. No, 2 questions. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for being very gracious today. Terrible.
Hi everyone, thanks so much for the presentation today and for the ceremony. I'm not sure if it's a direct question that I have. It's more something I'd like to express and then just get your thoughts on this generally. I really was taken by yourself, you speaking about Antarctica and how we need to really have a renewed way in which we listen. Antarctica is a really good example where there are no humans to tell us, and we really have to develop a new way of listening. And to me personally, that's very interesting because it tells me what we're able to be as human beings. Like, it's a transformation of ourselves by way of doing that. And what I think is often when I think, it's very rational, it's very logical. That's the way I've been told to think. And all our education systems pointed us like that. And I wonder what this kind of new type of thinking is, where I try to call it like a non-mind thinking, which is like where you think more with your entire presence, with your body. I just wonder where, like, even human rights, I think, is actually quite limited, because even the perception of human rights has always been like about being alive and being kept alive, and not necessarily like what's the quality of your life and what's your relationships like to things. And those are also, they're not just the rights of nature, but they're also human rights in a way. And so I think our whole perception has to really go beyond just kind of bringing nature into this realm of like what is alive, but also questioning the fact that we are alive as humans, but in many different ways than the ways that we have been taught to understand.
Thanks. Last question with that.
Thank you. Thank you all for the wonderful presentations. This is a question for Thomas, but I think Paul might have some insight as well. You just mentioned that in the news they're looking at operationalization questions. So what does flow mean? How much, when, who's in the biodiversity, who's protected, right? Is there a risk that we over-technicalize the question again and sort of regress back to an abstracted scientific process of determining the answers to these questions? And if so, how do we avoid that risk when we're in these spaces of, technical practice?
Thank you so much. I think probably the best thing to do now is if we can all wrap up an answer to those questions and any closing thoughts in maybe 1 or 2 minutes each. Thanks. Yeah. 1 minute each.
Not every Charter of Rights has this right, but one of them in the U's and then the Y is the right to a voice. And I think this is the opening to someone speaking up for the needs, the desires, the wants, something that is beyond, something that can't be reduced to technical procedure. Simple answer for you.
Well, thank you. I just want to wrap up by saying I was telling Jessica about the book called Biophilia that you see in the tables that are there, and I feel that in many ways that's the solution. And we promote that as a solution with the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature. Yes, of course, become a member, be an activist, and make it go to action, pass a law, educate, do movement building, litigate for nature, but most importantly, biophilia, fall in love with nature again. If you haven't fallen in love with nature yet, or you feel disconnected, go back to nature, go back to the river, go to the mountains, spend time in nature, get into a waterfall. When you really feel that you are nature, then there's no going back. And I feel that that's been the most important thing. We've been so separated from nature that we can allow ourselves to distract nature and destroy nature. But if we fall in love with nature again, if we really practice biophilia, and if you have a person who's not committed, take them to the forest, take them to the river. For me, that's the solution when we really feel what we're saying. Then when transformation is really gonna happen.
I think what everyone said is definitely the truth here. I guess that I would say that one thing that we need to all take into mind is what everyone has said, however you feel, and the urgency of now. Now, it's not time to study it, barely time to think about it. But the now, what is the rest of your day gonna be? It's probably more talking because humans like to do that. And it's probably going to be, maybe even going to another thing very similar. And this is so important. I'm glad we're doing this. This is not something that I'm trivializing. It is important that our species understands as a pack. How are we going to protect the generation to come? What are we going to do? I hear buzzwords out there like a hive mind. We have that. We have the ability to combine our intentions and to breathe them into a new reality. But it does take action. I hear the word activist, and that was kind of new to me when I was young because it was just part of being Ponca. You know, you're born, you do things. Like you don't dirty your water because somebody's gonna wanna drink, you know? I mean, simple stuff like that is really our true human nature. So let's do something.
We're known as the mother of parliaments, the English Parliament. It sits on the River Thames, and that River Thames runs through the bodies of everyone in there. We have a history of colonialism and disempowerment in this country. We also have a history of resistance and of extending franchise to working class men, to women, to young people. It's always been through violence and unrest, or the threat of violence and unrest. And I get the feeling today and these other days this week that unrest is here and nature is calling to be in the room. I can't promise she won't still be upset once she's in,
Right? Yeah.
but it's time to let her in.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone. Actually, I feel very honored that I'm here today with these amazing people. I just want to close answering to what you said. Sorry, I missed your name actually. I think we really use a lot of words, and we think that we can express ourselves only through language, but language is much more. And I think we also need to learn to speak nature's language, so to really feel the body language of Antarctica, what is the body language of a tree. And so I think we need to, with rights of nature, we're also bringing the rights of nature into our legal system. So to translate this kind of language, but we also need to unlearn our way of communicating and learn nature's language as well. So as Nati said before, go to a forest, meet a river, meet a tree, and also speak through the body language of a tree of a forest. Thanks.
Just on your question, I think it's a nice point to end as well. We live in a very complex and scientific society, and therefore I think we need both. I became the first person to ever swear a legal oath on a river in this country, so I get the spiritual element of sacredness. However, if I just did that, then it would be very easy for the Environment Agency and the mayor and the council to dismiss me. So as well as recognizing that my river is sacred, I can walk along the river or indeed go on Twitter and say, what is the ammonia concentration and flow rate of every single illegal outfall on my river, along with a photo and video. And then I combine that with the sacredness that says, I love my river, I see her as a goddess, and the only way you can stop me restoring and protecting her is to do the work yourself, imprison me or kill me, otherwise I'm going to keep doing it. Combine those two and it has, combine the science, combine the spiritualness and the sacredness, and it has a power that cannot be beaten and that will ensure that nature is restored and protected in these lands.
Thank you so much, Paul, for ending on that note. And we do need to wrap up now, but please do stay with us for some lunch. And I would like to say a heartfelt, huge thank you to all of you for being here today. Isha discreetly messaged me to say this is the most grounding experience she's had, I think, so far at London Climate Action Week. So thank you, Paul. Thank you, Roberta. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Casey. And thank you, Natalia.